Coming hours. Tejesu Adeoye, thank you for the update. Let's get back to the studio where we're following closely developments with the Nigerian Education Loan Fund. I'm joined by the MD, Mr. Akintunde Sawyer. Mr. Sawyer, thank you so much for staying the course on the program. All right, so let's pick it up from where we stopped. We're talking about how do you get these funds back, and it sounds like you're saying, a self-employed person will buy of his own volition, decide to come back to the federal government and say, now I am self-employed, how do I pay these monies back? And I'm thinking, how realistic is that?
That's an entirely fair question, right? So look, what the law requires is for everybody who's taken a loan post NYSE, 2 years after NYSE, to make a declaration as to their current employment status.
Okay.
This applies to both the employed, or those who are looking for employment, and those who want to go into self-employment. So we don't ask for any reporting until 2 years after National Youth Service Corps has been completed.
Okay.
Once that happens, they report back to us, or we make contact with them if we haven't heard from them to say, it's 2 years since your youth corps, what's your current employment status? It's very clear. If you are employed, then we will, and we're not receiving any remittances from your employer, we will ask the employer for the remittances, and if they don't or are not able to provide information as to how they're processing that and how they're doing it, there is an obligation on the employer, and effectively they can face serious fines or imprisonment even, the employer. Now, the self-employed effectively becomes a person that's employing themselves. So in truth, people know what the law is. We're going to make it very clear to them when they're applying for the loan. They sign a declaration.
Okay.
If they don't make that reportage back to the NEL Fund, then actually it's quite serious. So yes, there's a degree of trust, but of course there are also consequences for those who decide that they can pay but won't pay.
These monies, we're going to get back to where you're getting these monies from. But you mentioned that they're supposed to get back to you 2 years after NYSC. What happens if they don't have a job then? I left school some 15 years ago, and I still have a friend who calls me for a job that he's not been employed since.
Okay, that's the most unfortunate situation. It's very unfortunate, and we have to sympathize with people who find themselves in that situation. Having said that, one thing that the NEL Fund is not doing, or is not going to do, is go after people because they have finished NYSE at the 2 years down the line. If they don't have a job, then it means they can't pay. If someone can't pay for a loan that they've taken to improve their own status in life and increase their own employability opportunities, if they don't have a job, they can't get a job, we can't get the loan from them. It's as simple as that. So there's a subtle difference between can pay and won't pay and can't pay. If you can't pay, you can't pay. We're not going to go after people like that. It just wouldn't be fair, because the intention in getting this loan was to actually put themselves in a much stronger position. However, we believe that with all the other initiatives that His Excellency, the President, is putting in place, that Nigeria will be quite a different place in terms of employment and employability years down the line. And I think we're already seeing from some of the initiatives that the administration is taking in other areas, of which the NEL Fund is only one, that these things will join up later and actually make the situation much better. So again, to charge interest, okay? Certainly at the beginning of this process, we will not be charging interest, but there are specific situations and scenarios. For example, if people take the loan and then they go abroad and work and serve another nation, we can't stop them from doing that, but we can apply interest to such loans. So there are certain situations where interest can be charged.
So whoever takes your loan and then jackpots, you'll be waiting for them to return.
Well, again, what we're not doing is we're not focused on setting traps for people. It's important to recognize that this loan comes from federation taxes. It's for people of Nigeria, and the idea is that we hope it will serve Nigeria. Okay? Now, if you take the loan and don't pay back, what you're effectively doing is you're stopping somebody else
from getting the loan,
from getting the opportunity to get the loan.
Sure.
So it's quite serious. It's not that we're not going to set traps for people, but we're going to educate people that actually you've accessed it, you've had an opportunity, you've moved on, you've done better, therefore it is your responsibility, moral and otherwise, to repay so that other people can join the process.
Absolutely. We're going to be also getting back to some lives, and that I'll be informing the viewer. You can continue to watch this conversation on our YouTube page and also on other platforms. We're on Sky TV for viewers in the UK, and also on the Sky UK channel 524. And several other platforms that you can watch us with. Well, right now we're joining the official commissioning of the Jimeta Grade Interchange by His Excellency Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, former President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, in Adamawa State. Stay with us, everyone, as we continue this programming on our other platforms. So I like the way you put it, that you are not necessarily putting, a yoke on the neck of people. But it's important that everyone who takes this loan also accepts the responsibility of paying back to benefit those coming, behind. I'd like you to talk to us about how this scheme is being funded.
Okay.
Where is the money coming from?
Okay. So the money effectively is coming, the amount in the first place is 1% of all federal taxes.
Okay.
So the Federal Inland Revenue Service, as it collects federation taxes, is required to remit 1% of those taxes to the Nigerian Education Loan Fund. Having said that, the law does allow the fund to raise funds from other places. So we can go out and source funds and investments for those who perhaps want to contribute to the fund. That then goes on top of the 1% of FIRS remittances to the fund.
From the figures, do you think we have the funds for this? You mentioned 1.8 to 1.9 million students,
yeah.
And you're looking at the possibility of perhaps 1.2 million. Do you think we have funds to start and to also sustain this program?
Okay, so I think it's important to recognize that this is an anchor program for Mr. President. He's been very focused, even from the campaign. He talked about the importance of education, the importance of education, and the importance of education. So I think that we have, and I think what you find generally in this part of the world is that if there's political will, then things work. I can tell you that His Excellency has the political will to drive this through. Therefore, I can confirm to you that the funds are available. Clearly, we don't have all the funds in one go because these are from federation taxes which need to be collected and then a portion allocated to the fund. But certainly the system that's been set up by this administration to ensure that this is a sustainable program from a financial perspective is robust. It's highly robust, it's highly effective, and it actually allows us to continue to drive excellence in terms of access to education. It's important for me to mention to you that if you look at other countries around the world, South Korea, for example, where they focus on academics and technological integration.
Yeah.
Look at countries like Finland, who looked at teacher professionalism. If you look at countries like Singapore, who focused on skills and innovation, and countries like Canada, who focused on things like developing a good learning environment, lifelong learning, also innovation, diversity and inclusivity. All of those seem to be the sorts of things that can actually take education in this country to another level.
Indeed.
We're focused on a small element of that, but if you look at the overall picture that this administration has put in place, it kind of captures those. And the countries I mentioned, you can see where they sit today. Education is critical. This administration recognizes that.
So apparently this is an investment for this administration in the education of people. Hopefully all those that need it take advantage of it. But if everyone ticks this box, you're a Nigerian, you're a student, you have your JAMB, ID or BVN, do you get back to students after the application as to why they were not picked for the loan? Because it seems that there are other criteria outside this one, as we earlier discussed.
Okay. So, yes, I think, for students who say, look, I applied properly, I've ticked the various boxes that I was required to tick, but I didn't get the loan. It is an obligation for us to be able to explain to them why they didn't. Otherwise, we leave them in a vacuum, and that's not really fair. A lot of people are looking forward to this. A lot of people are hopeful. This has been long coming. People have found all sorts of ways to fund their own education over the years. And now this is a break, this is an opportunity, this is a ray of hope, a ray of light. And of course, if that ray of light doesn't come through, there needs to be an explanation. And there's a multitude of reasons why people may not get this loan. But our focus is to try and give as many people as possible the opportunity to access this education. I think it's important to also say that the more people that are educated formally, the more people that are employed, the more people who perhaps are going to be able to go and explore entrepreneurial talents they may have, the greater the socio-economic impact that this is going to have, the greater the funds that are going to be available for the tax authorities to collect. So this is a sort of self-fulfilling program, that the more successful it is, the more funding it will get, the more institutions will spring up, the more class sizes there will be. It will actually feed itself when it begins to kick in. The beginning is always the most difficult part. But once it begins to kick in and it starts on a cycle, it will feed itself and it will run itself. And I believe that, this is going to change the game for Nigeria if we continue to stay the course and continue to let people understand that even if you don't get it now, you may get it at another attempt in the future, because there may be more funds or more spaces. Remember I said that, so one of the limitations we have is the capacity of the institutions we have today. Once we've given loans to fill that capacity, we can't give loans to other people who can't get access to classes or access to institutions. So that's a limited factor, and that's one of the explanations that might be given.
I like the way you put it. The cycle looks simple, that if we get more people educated, it will amount to more innovation that will better develop the country, jobs and what have you. But how do you explain the situation where we're having some skyrocketing figure in the area of unemployment? So prior to this time, before empowering more students to get educated, the few who are even graduating have that tale to tell in the area of whether they are underemployed or whether they even get to do a job at all. And whether or not we are seeing, there's even another angle to it, whether or not we're churning out as many quality graduates who will not line up to wait for jobs like this. How critical is this to this program?
So I think it's extremely critical. And if you look at any process, any program that you set up anywhere, the quality is always a little bit suspect at the beginning. As time goes on, if it's implemented properly, quality improves. I think one of the other things that we've obviously noticed is that investment will flow into a country where the people have the capacity to do the work that allows the investment to grow or to get a return. One of the big issues around this is, okay, so today we may have graduates who can't get jobs. But does that mean we stop educating people?
Absolutely.
Clearly not. We've got to grow the pool of people who want more knowledge, who can gain more knowledge, who have the capacity to acquire more knowledge. Because in effect, companies will come to Nigeria and invest. Foreign investment will come here if they feel that we don't just have bodies, i.e. numbers, but we have numbers that have skills that can help them with the production. Again, I can name a multitude of countries around the world, but I don't want to get into sort of naming countries. There are many countries in the world today that manufacture or have industry that serves other markets. We have 210 million people. We can do lots of manufacturing here. We've got the numbers. We can do all of this, and we can serve other markets and gain advantage for our dear nation.
Indeed. So with the ongoing application process, is there a feedback mechanism where students who are attempting to be on this get back to you if they have issues, with their application?
Yes, so we have lots of platforms that we've either created or that we're following to see what the issues, what are the trending issues, what are the challenges people are having. Based on the information we're getting from those platforms, we're putting out additional information, we're upgrading or updating the information we have to enable people to understand why they may be having those challenges. This is a constant learning process. And by the way, we're never going to get to the point where it's perfect. We're going to continue to learn, we're going to continue to understand what the challenges are. Because we don't want too much interface or any human interface in all of this, we're not encouraging people to come to us direct. So we don't want a situation where somebody says, hey, look, I can help you, but help me to help you. We don't want that to happen. So we're using electronic channels, we're communicating with people. Sometimes it's the student that we need to communicate with, or the applicant, if you like.
But do you think that entirely, takes out the corruption tendency? Because the people applying online are real people. The people doing the selection are also real people. I hope you're not assuming that that completely erases the potential capacity or ability of someone in your system getting funds to help someone on the outside.
Well, what you can't do is completely eliminate all possibilities of conspiracies, of people trying to buck the system. You can't do that. I'm not going to sit here and say it's completely foolproof. No system is completely foolproof. What we're trying to do here is make it faceless. So whoever is making the application will never get to meet with the person who's making the decision or who's questioning the process. Clearly, for example, if somebody makes an application that is rejected for any reason and they want to know why, that case has to be evaluated and then we communicate back. But all of this is logged. So if there's a rejection for any reason and then there's a sudden change, we have a process that looks at what happens. We can audit that process to see if anything that shouldn't have happened. It can happen. People are always looking for ways, all over the world, by the way, not just in Nigeria, bucking the system, seeing how they can get advantage over someone else. We are trying to ensure that that doesn't happen, in the first instance with what we're doing. And we're going to use continuous improvement strategies to ensure that we keep this as anonymized as possible.
How many applications have you gotten thus far?
So, again, we're in an ongoing process. I'd rather not comment on the numbers because, whatever number I give you now will change in the next 5 minutes.
What I am highly anticipated. So
I'm sorry? Yeah.
This scheme was highly anticipated.
Yeah.
What I was asking is, did you experience a surge?
Okay. So, yes, we did. We did experience a surge. We had a good number of hits on our site, lots of people wanting to register. And clearly, what was good for us is that, we tested this rigorously to see that if we did get that surge, would it affect our technology? It hasn't. We've absorbed it. It's taken the numbers very nicely. But there has been a surge, and actually continue. As we carry on with our sensitization, the surge is growing. And we're very happy about that because, yes, there's been latent demand for this sort of scheme, and we are really getting a lot of interest, and we're very excited about that.
What was the number the last time you checked?
I can't remember. I know you're trying to...
Is it in the region of 100,000 and above? Just give me a figure.
You're not far off. Okay. You're not far off.
We've hit 100,000.
I didn't say that.
I need something for the newspapers to use.
I know you need something for the newspapers to use. One of the things I'm really trying to avoid is second-guessing the general public. And I do want people to be encouraged to apply. What I need you to know is that we've got enough funds to fund all the applications that we've had so far. And we will continue to get funds to fund a lot more. I really want people to continue to apply, and I want you to, the message I want the newspapers to put out is that there is capacity for more applications. Please continue to apply.
But you did say we're in the region of 100,000, so editors can take note.
I didn't quite say that. I said you're not far off. I didn't say how far off you might be or not. But to be fair,
yes,
we will be having a press conference fairly soon where we will release the figures, and those figures will go out to everybody at once. Because another thing that we want to try to do is to be fair with your great profession, the journalists, to say, look, we're not leaking or providing information for one house and not for the other. We'd rather just ensure that, because this is really a program of great interest, even to journalists. we want to be sure that we're giving that information in a fair manner and an accurate manner.
But trust me, you don't have to wait for the major press conference, to push out information. That's why we're here, and you're here in person. Whatever you say here can get out to every other person.
This is true. And the message I want to put out is that people should continue to apply. People should be encouraged that this is a fair process. And I won't wait for the press conference to say that. I think when it gets to providing numbers, then really we need to be very specific and very accurate. And I need to act responsibly as the managing director and provide accurate information. So I'm not being evasive. And the press conference is coming up in the next week or so. So
I understand it quite well. Let's talk about the early day challenges that you're faced with. Yeah, because you make it sound so simple, seamless, you're quite excited about it. I understand that, but you must be faced with some challenges. Sure. How are you, maneuvering that?
Sure. So the primary challenges that we're facing today, and we are facing some challenges, is ensuring that the information gets out there. There are many different channels that we need to employ. Particularly the channels that people of the age and subset that are applying for this use. It's generally not newspapers, by the way. So social media channels is where the youth of this country tend to spend their time.
Absolutely.
So we're looking at that, and that's been a bit of a challenge for us because on the one hand, we want to educate the general public. On the other hand, we want to get directly through to the students or the applicants who are in that subset who perhaps get their own information from different places. I think one of the challenges that we face is misinformation. So people taking information, not reading it properly, not understanding it properly,
and interpreting it differently.
Yeah, and retweeting or resending that information in a way that is perhaps not so accurate. So we're having to spend a lot of time correcting misconceptions and misinformation. That's a big issue for us. We're going to have to educate so that we can provide access to education. So as an institution ourselves, we're having to do a lot of educating and re-educating and correcting and clarifying. And that's fine, we'll do that. But it will take time. We're going to have to wait for that information to come back. We don't want the rumor mill to take hold of this. We want to be on top of this. That's why as frequently as possible, I'm trying to get out, others are trying to get out so we can provide the right information. Your question about figures is very specific, but everything else we're prepared to share. We're doing videos, we're putting advertisements out, we're connecting with people who are people of great influence who can put out this information accurately. But that's an area of challenge for us, and I think it's going to continue for some time. Misinformation happens. There's also people who don't necessarily want this to work. The other area of challenge for us is data. Data accuracy is critical. We don't want to go to a manual process. Data accuracy is absolutely critical to us. And I mentioned earlier, a digit wrong here, an alphabet wrong there, a slash where it shouldn't be, where it should be a dash. When you're inputting into computer systems, can actually cause issues for people. And we just need to be sure that the data aligns.
One would, naturally think that ivory towers should lead in this regard, that our universities should have gotten hold of data management. What's your experience thus far in that regard?
Okay, so, indeed, the people that we're tending to deal with are academics, people who are very focused on research, statistics, numbers and things. However, what we're trying to do is create a standardized system, a standard template. Now, academics across the education spectrum, the tertiary education spectrum, don't necessarily use the same templates. They don't necessarily use the same criteria. So one of the things that we've found is that even where the information is good, the way it's laid out is not necessarily the way that we want it. We have to standardize. And then of course, the approach, the requirement for high standards varies from institution to institution. We need to be flattened. We need to flatten it out. We need it to be flattened. We need to standardize. So part of the challenge we have is saying, hey, this is the way we want the information to give your students the best possible chance of getting the loan. Well, those are teething problems. We expect it. And we've expected it way before we launched. And we're working very closely with the institutions, the ICT departments within institutions, to ensure that the information is the way we need to have it and is as accurate as possible.
Absolutely. Misinformation, data accuracy. You didn't talk about funding. You have enough money, right?
Yeah, I talked about political will earlier, and I think what you may or may not be aware of is that there was an act that was signed into law on the 12th of June 2023.
All right.
Mr. President represented that law to the House and Assembly to the National Assembly for repeal and reenactment. That went through in a record time. I think it took about 3 or 4 days. Mr. President, the President, should I say, the President has absolutely put everything he can to ensure that Nigerians who need to get this education but are not getting it because of this financial issue, he's put everything behind it, so we do have the funds.
All
yes.
Right. Akintunde Sawyer is the MD, Nigerian Education Loan Fund. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for having me here, Mr. Nifemi.
And I'm sure that we're going to return to this conversation subsequently to keep up with how much work you're doing and how much results you're getting.
Sure. May I just make a quick comment? I'd like to congratulate my country, Nigeria, on attaining 25 years of democratic governance. I'd like to congratulate this administration for being so bold. This project that we're doing is a bold one. I think this is what is required now, and I congratulate the President on his boldness and leadership.
Thank you, everyone, for being a part of it. We are back shortly with more conversation, I believe by 6 p.m. as we talk to more ministers and head of federal government agencies.